master distiller because it's a whole lot less work. And you're not fighting bugs and critters.
For years, fans believed Digger Maines had one of the most peaceful personalities on Moonshiners. But behind his smile was a man who had spent decades around some of the most controversial figures in the moonshine world. And one name in particular changed the way he looked at loyalty, tradition, and the future of the craft. What really happened between Digger and the legendary figure who influenced him? And why does his story reveal a side of moonshining most fans never saw? Join us as we uncover the man who showed Digger the dangerous side of the world he loved. The making of a moonshiner. Before cameras followed him through the mountains and millions of viewers knew his name, Digger Maines was just a boy growing up in Newport, Tennessee. There was nothing really attractive about his early life. He was never actively chasing fame, television opportunities, or any sort of recognition. He was simply growing up in a small community where traditions were passed down quietly and where people valued hard work compared to attention. But hidden among those mountain roads were experiences that would eventually shape him into the person fans would come to respect. Digger's father, Charlie Maines, owned Brown Funeral Home. For most children, spending time inside a funeral home would have been uncomfortable, as it was a place filled with grief, loss, and difficult emotions that would be traumatic for children to experience. But Digger saw something different. While other kids were outside playing, he often found himself helping his father. He helped to clean rooms, prepared spaces, and watched how his father handled families during some of the hardest moments of their lives. The most intriguing part is what stayed with him. It wasn't the sadness or anguish he saw, it was the way his father treated people. According to him, his dad never judged anyone based on their money or social status. Whether someone was wealthy or struggling, every family received the same respect and attention. Digger watched that closely, and without realizing it, he was learning lessons that would follow him for the rest of his life, which included patience, responsibility, and respect. Years later, those same qualities became part of the reason viewers connected with him on television. Because unlike many television reality show stars who became famous for arguments and attention, Digger became known for being steady and stable. He rarely rushed through decisions. He rather studied situations carefully, approaching his craft with the same precision he had learned years earlier. But while his father's funeral home taught him about life and death, another world was quietly captivating his attention. The mountains surrounding Newport carried stories that outsiders rarely understood. For generations, Appalachian communities had been connected to moonshining, a tradition built around making spirits using methods passed down through families. The people who practiced the craft were not always wealthy or powerful. Many were simply people who had learned something from previous generations and continued doing what they knew. When Digger was around 14 years old, his curiosity became more intense. He approached a friend's father who built stills and asked to learn the process. But instead of immediately accepting him, the man told him something that stayed with him. "Come back when you are older." At the time, moonshining carried a different reputation. Many parents wanted their children far away from that world, doing more reputable things with their lives. It was seen as dangerous, and people involved in it often lived carefully to avoid attention. It's true that the hills surrounding Newport weren't exactly famous, but they carried stories that made them unique. Among those stories was the long tradition of moonshiners who were hiding from the law. But in many Appalachian communities, the reality was more complicated. Interestingly, Digger's interest never watered down. When he finally turned 18, he returned, this time with his father's permission, and he officially began learning the craft. He wasn't looking for fame or trying to become a legend. He was simply trying to understand something that had fascinated him for years. And eventually, That curiosity would lead him to the person who would change everything. A man who became a legend in the moonshine world. A man whose name still creates debate today. The legend he looked up to. When Digger met one of the most popular moonshiners in history, Marvin "Popcorn" Sutton, his life took a full turn. Most people, even those from Discovery Channel, thought that Popcorn mentored Digger right from the start to make moonshine. But Digger had not made it clear. According to him, he had assisted Popcorn when the latter built his first 500-gallon still, approximately 1,800 liters. He said that the working relationship was about sharing information on how to make moonshine efficiently, and was an equal partnership between friends that produced great-tasting moonshine. But Popcorn gave him lessons nonetheless. Because Digger had learned patience, he got something very rare in the moonshining world, a teacher who freely told him his secrets. Popcorn was outspoken, independent, and completely committed to his lifestyle. To some, he was a symbol of Appalachian history. Yet to many others, he represented a world that was becoming increasingly difficult to separate from controversy. But for Digger, meeting Popcorn was about learning from someone who understood the craft at a level few others did. And this would change his life eventually. He learned from Popcorn how to keep the temperature steady even when the night wind blew hard, and how to know when a run was right without ever needing to check a gauge. Popcorn's lessons were more than just how to do something. They became invaluable to Digger. Popcorn would often tell him not to work out of greed, but to perfect his craft out of pride. Frankly, the work was a mammoth task for him. He had to carry bags of corn, cut down wood to build fires, and stand next to the flames without any protection from the intense heat. But Digger saw it as a holy chore. He recalled that he began to think of the still as a living thing rather than just a tool. Digger soaked up Popcorn's knowledge like a sponge and carried it about. But when the law points a target on your back, it's incredibly difficult to escape it. The stubbornness Popcorn showed before the law for years finally caught up with him as the government officers he had been able to trick for decades found him. Digger revealed that Popcorn was subsequently convicted of serious offenses associated with moonshining, as well as illegal possession of a firearm. He might have become a legend, with many documentaries centered on him, but he's no longer around to enjoy such recognition. In 2009, he died from carbon monoxide poisoning, apparently committing suicide to avoid federal jail time. Certainly a sad ending to an interesting life, but far from stopping him, that loss made Digger smarter. He promised that the things Popcorn taught him would not be buried with the person who taught them. Years later, when television came calling, Digger found himself facing a decision that would completely change his life. Should he keep the tradition hidden the way it had always been? Or should he bring it into the open and risk changing everything? Because the man who taught him how to protect the craft was also the reason Digger had to rethink what that craft meant. And now fate was going to teach him how to bring it out into the open in a way he didn't quite like. From the hills to the screens. Digger Maines spent almost 40 years in his trade. Moonshining was supposed to be done in secret, so he didn't particularly care for attention. But fate has a funny way of bringing tales to light. It happened through his longtime friend, Mark Ramsey. Mark had been on the 3rd season of Moonshiners, a new reality show on the Discovery Channel that followed the secret world of moonshining in the woods. Men like Digger would never do something so brave and dangerous. It felt like breaking a holy rule to show the life of a moonshiner on national television. Mark saw something bigger, though. He believed that their story, with all of its skill, history, and heart, should be told to the world. When he asked Digger to come with him, Digger automatically turned him down with a firm no. He had been getting better at staying unseen for decades. He was happy behind the still. He thought fame was for other people. However, Mark didn't give up. According to Mark, if they stayed back, someone else would tell their story. And not only would they get it wrong, but they might tell a different story altogether that didn't represent what the Tennessee Hills stood for. It was with a lot of fear and doubt that Digger finally went in front of the cameras for the first time. Everyone, including him, was shocked by what happened next. As soon as Digger walked onto the screens, viewers could clearly tell the difference. He was a real one, not a character or an actor. Viewers had seen plenty of reality stars create personalities for the cameras. Digger was different because the cameras never seemed to change the man they were following. With his dry sense of humor and his mountain knowledge, he was very different from them. People were immediately drawn to him because he was very sure of himself, he respected tradition, and he dealt with every task with the precision he had learned from both his father and his mentor. His performance went from being a risk to being a massive success. Moonshiners became more than just a fun show. Digger and Mark had a kind of chemistry that kept viewers from leaving, much to the delight of the Discovery Channel. In each episode, Digger and Mark would fight, laugh, and try new things, but they worked together like that, inspired by the same fire that used to burn in the hidden slopes of Newport. Digger had become bold enough that he didn't even flinch when presented with the idea of putting his name on a bottle for the first time. The things that once had to be secret were now praised. Since the supposed criminal act was now widely accepted, he agreed. But being famous costs a lot. Facing the glare of the cameras was really strange to him. It took some time for Digger to get used to being known everywhere he went, like in grocery stores, festivals, and even airports. Suddenly, every stranger he met asked for pictures and stories. It was too much for a man who used to run away from attention, but he dealt with it humbly, telling everyone he was still just a mountain craftsman doing what he loved. The success made them feel safe, proud, and at ease. But it also brought a storm that fame couldn't shield him from. Digger was about to face a fight that no amount of skill could beat. The battle nobody expected. By the 13th season of Moonshiners, fans had come to see Digger Maines as virtually indestructible. That's why nobody was prepared for what he eventually revealed. First, people began to notice that Digger looked more tired and was moving more slowly than usual, and rumors spread across the internet. For months, no one really knew what was wrong, but Digger soon cleared the air. He finally told Mark Ramsey that he had been diagnosed with chronic lymphocytic leukemia, simply known as CLL, a cancer of the blood and bone marrow that grows slowly. The news shocked everyone beyond words. According to Mark, even while disclosing such news, Digger's voice was calm and almost matter-of-fact, like someone who has seen a lot of death and life. The camera caught no tears or any trace of emotion. He told Mark that it wasn't the end, but it wasn't fun either. People from all over the world sent him prayers and notes on social media. Even people who never met him called him family. CLL is a disease that produces too many abnormal white blood cells in the blood. This weakens the immune system, leaving the body more susceptible to illness and fatigue. Most people who have it deal with their symptoms for years on end under a watch-and-wait plan that includes regular tests, close monitoring, and finally targeted treatments when the body needs them. The fight lasts a long time. Discovery Channel suddenly found itself between a rock and a hard place. They had to decide whether to use Digger's condition to get more viewers or to treat him with care. Thankfully, they picked the latter. They didn't try to make the story more dramatic or draw more attention to Digger than it was. In fact, the production team changed his behind-the-scenes routine so he could rest when he needed to. His co-stars, Mark Ramsey, Stephen Ray Tickle, Josh Owens, and Tim Smith, also stepped up to help him. The illness didn't end Digger's life. It only made him remember how valuable it was. He kept working, making changes to stills and trying out new mash blends while always laughing with Mark. People watched as the cameras caught his fight, but what they saw was pure survival, still glowing in the firelight. While he was recovering, he got caught up in the controversy surrounding the show. One of the biggest questions surrounding the show is whether the individuals featured are actual moonshiners. While the producers claim the cast members are authentic moonshiners, there is evidence to the contrary. While he was recovering, he got caught up in the controversy surrounding the show. While the producers claim the cast members are authentic moonshiners, there is evidence to the contrary. Many of the so-called moonshiners have been linked to other businesses and ventures, calling into question their true identity as illegal alcohol producers. Critics have also questioned the authenticity of the events depicted on the show. Many suspect that the dramatic events and confrontations are staged for entertainment. From run-ins with the law to intense rivalries, the show seems to portray a heightened sense of drama that may not reflect the reality of moonshining. Either way, Digger has made his mark on the world of reality television. And regardless of the controversies, there are loyal fans who tune in during every episode to watch their favorite star do his thing. But when a star remains in the spotlight for so long, questions are bound to arise. The man who changed Digger forever. Looking back, the most complicated part of Digger Mains's story isn't that he learned moonshining from Popcorn Sutton. It's that the person who introduced him to a world of tradition, secrecy, and craftsmanship was also someone whose life was filled with controversy. To many fans, Popcorn Sutton was a real legend. He was the kind of figure people either admired or criticized. Some saw him as a guardian of Appalachian history, a man protecting a craft that had existed for generations before television cameras ever arrived. Others saw a completely different picture. They saw someone who repeatedly challenged the law, refused to change his lifestyle, and eventually faced serious legal consequences because of it. And that is where Digger's connection to him becomes interesting, because Digger didn't just learn how to make moonshine from popcorn, he inherited a philosophy and the idea that the craft mattered more than the money. That idea that tradition was something worth protecting. But there was also a lesson hidden in popcorn's downfall. Digger watched someone who became famous for staying hidden suddenly become one of the most talked-about figures in the entire country. He watched how attention could turn a private lifestyle into something the entire world wanted to examine. And years later, when Digger himself became a television personality, he was forced to face the same question Popcorn had faced. What happens when a secret world is no longer secret? The difference was that Digger chose a different path. Instead of running from the spotlight completely, he used it as a way to preserve the history he cared about. He became the person explaining the tradition instead of the person hiding from it. But perhaps the biggest irony is that the man who helped create the Digger Mains fans know today was never the perfect hero people imagined. Popcorn Sutton had flaws. He had serious legal problems. He made different choices that came with consequences. But he also passed down knowledge that Digger still carries today. And that is what makes their story complicated. Digger didn't inherit Popcorn Sutton's mistakes. He inherited the knowledge, the patience, and the respect for the craft. And maybe that is why their story is so complicated. Because sometimes the people who shape our lives are not perfect heroes. Sometimes they are simply people who leave behind lessons we carry long after they are gone. Most times, they are people with mistakes, struggles, and difficult pasts who still leave behind something valuable. For Digger Mains, Popcorn Sutton was not just a mentor, but but a keen reminder that every legend has another side that the public rarely sees. And maybe that is the real story behind Digger's journey. Not just about the most evil person he ever worked with, but the complicated man who eventually helped create the person millions of fans eventually came to love. Because behind every tradition, every bottle, and every story from the mountains, there is always a person whose choices shaped everything that came after. His story proves that sometimes the people who shape us the most are also the ones with the most complicated lives. Popcorn Sutton was seen as a legend, but he was also a man surrounded by controversy, and the lessons he left behind changed Digger's life forever. So was Popcorn really the person who almost pulled Digger into a dangerous world? Or was he the reason Digger became one of the most respected faces of moonshiners? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.